I am delighted to introduce Rene Ohms, who will be talking to us about making better decisions underground, hopefully avoiding rescues to begin with. By way of introduction, Renee lives in the Black Hills of South Dakota. She has been an expedition caver for more than 20 years and has caved throughout the United States and in 4 other countries. Renee is a fellow of the National Speleological Society and received the Lew Bicking Award in 2020. She has been an NCRC instructor since 2009, is the NCRC Wyoming State Coordinator, and serves on the review committee for American caving accidents. Renee is also a wilderness first responder and a SPRAT Level 1 rope access technician. Renee's presentation tonight focuses on decision-making underground. She chose this topic because she's been in many situations where decisions needed to be made during a caving incident. She's spent a lot of time thinking back on these decisions, the factors that went into making them, and their consequences. Thinking through possible scenarios and outcomes can help us make us safer cavers, and this presentation is intended to give you some tools and food for thought. Renee, I'll pass it over to you. Feel free to start screen sharing whenever you are ready.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. And yeah, huge thanks to both you and Gretchen for putting this whole series together. I've gotten a lot out of it myself, and I've just really enjoyed it. So yeah, thanks for coming tonight, everyone. I'm going to be talking about making decisions underground. And primarily, I'm going to focus on the decisions that you're going to make in the early stages of an incident if something does happen on your cave trip. And we're going to look at some of the factors that you might want to think about when you're making those decisions. And as Tom said in his presentation, you know, I won't be able to give you the answer because a lot of things depend on the situation. But this is intended to give you that food for thought and hopefully generate a lot of discussion in the chat. I won't be able to keep an eye on the chat so much until about halfway through this presentation, which is when we're going to go through a few scenarios, and that's going to be a lot more interactive. So we'll have a lot more back and forth about what you would do in these scenarios in the chat. And then at the end, if we have time, we're going to play a little game. So you know, most of the time you just go caving and nothing weird happens. You know, you have a great time, and we generally don't spend a lot of time looking back on those trips and thinking about all the things that could have happened that didn't. And, you know, the kinds of decisions that you make on those trips are generally not very important. You know, a lot of times I spent a lot of time on caving trips thinking about food and pee. So those are the 2 things that I make the most decisions about. So nothing too important. But when something happens on your trip that's bad, things suddenly get really real. And, you know, because I've been in this situation many times where, you know, you're just going along having a great time with your friends, and then all of a sudden one or more of these things happens to you or to your friends. And yeah, there's a couple terms on here in case you're not familiar with what I'm talking about. Stuck. What I mean by stuck is you're actually physically stuck in a tight passage, and so you can't get out of it for whatever reason. You might have just tried to push into something that's a little too small for you and you got wedged, or your friend did this, or you know, maybe your clothing is stuck, something like that. And then stuck on rope, you know, that means you're stuck on rope and can't go up or down. That could result from a lack of training with your equipment, or something happens to you, like you get hit by a rock while you're on rope and you get stuck. Entrapment, what I'm talking about there is generally you hear about entrapment with rising floodwaters. So, you know, you might be on a caving trip and then there's a thunderstorm outside, the water rises, and you and your team get trapped in the cave because of the flooding. So that's entrapment. Entrapment can also happen if a passage collapses. Doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. And a couple other things here to point out: medical emergencies and illnesses. You know, those things can happen to you underground, just like they can happen to you on the surface. It's just, you know, being in a cave isn't the best place to have that kind of thing happen to you. And so if that happens to someone on your team, it's important to know what factors to think about in making a decision about what to do about that. And then hypothermia is, that can be a standalone issue. Maybe, the person is, has been sitting still for a while, they're getting cold, they might not have enough warm clothing, they might be getting wet, or it can result from one of these other things. Because a lot of times when you have one of these issues on your cave trip, you're going to end up sitting still for a while and you're probably going to get cold. So most of the caves that we cave in typically are cold enough to cause hypothermia. So it should always be, in the forefront of your mind that someone could succumb to hypothermia. Okay, so if one of these things were to happen on your caving trip, what would you do? Well, like it or not, you're going to choose your own adventure. So I don't know if anyone else out there loved these books as much as I did when I was a kid, and I didn't even know this one called The Cave of Time existed. So I'm going to have to look that one up and get a copy. But these are really fun books. If you haven't heard of them before, at the end of each chapter, they're short chapters, you get to choose what the main character is going to do next. And so you're presented with a choice. And so like option 1, you turn to page 45 and continue the story from there. And if you pick option 2, you go to page 50. And you just keep making these decisions for the main character as you go along. And eventually, you get to the end of the book, but the outcome is entirely dependent on the decisions that you made. And if you don't like the outcome, can you go back and try again? Yeah, sure. It's a book. You can start over. But in real life and in the universe that we live in anyway, you can't go back and try again. You don't get a second try. But if you don't like the outcome, this is an iterative process. You make a decision, you see what the outcome is, and then you're making another decision. And so you can make a new decision to help improve the next outcome. But if all of this is just too much pressure for you, the permanence of your decisions, can you just opt out and be like, nope, I'm done. I'm not going to make a decision. You really can't, because choosing to do nothing is actually a decision too. Sometimes it might be the best decision. Depends on the situation. So you're going to be making a decision one way or the other. So next we're going to explore some of the factors to think about if something does happen on your caving trip. So yeah, first of all, what happened? Do you even know exactly what happened? Did you see it happen? Do you have all the information that you need? And what gear do we have? Tom just talked about that a bit in his presentation. What do I have and what does everybody else on my team have? What do we have collectively to help solve this problem? And what do we need? Do those two things match? If we don't have what we need, is there something that we can improvise with what we do have? Or is it something critical that we really do need that we don't have? If you need something that you don't have, yeah, you're going to have to send someone out of the cave to get that equipment, or someone's going to have to bring it to you. When will your surface watch call for help? Hopefully on all of your caving trips, you do have a surface watch. You have someone who knows where you're going and when you plan to get out, and they're going to be calling for help if you don't come out on time. So a lot of times in these situations, you have to do some calculations. You're thinking, okay, it's whatever time of day it is, and our surface watch, won't even be worried for another, 5 or 6 hours. How long is it going to take to get people together and get them sent our way? Maybe we do really need to send someone out right now to get help. Or maybe our surface watch is going to be worried in about an hour, and we really need everyone that we can to help with the incident underground, and we can't afford to send anybody out. It might be a better idea to just let that out time expire, and then the surface watch will activate that process and people will come in to help you. can we handle this ourselves? Tom just gave an excellent presentation about the difference between a small party assisted rescue and a call out rescue. And the question you're going to be asking yourself is, can we do it? Do we have what we need? And can we do a SPAR? Can we do this as a self-rescue, or is this going to be a call out, or is it going to be some combination thereof? Do we even have the training and experience to make that decision? And, you know, Tom talked about spinal immobilization, for example. If no one on your team has the medical training to make that assessment, then you're probably looking at a call out rescue, because you don't know if that person can be moved safely under their own power. Another thing to think about is how many cavers are on your team. There was a little bit of discussion about this in the last presentation as well. Yeah, 3 cavers is the minimum number for safe caving. But yeah, say you've got 3 people on your team, 1 person gets injured. Do you leave 1 person with that patient and then send someone solo out of the cave to get help? Good question. You know, how far are you from the entrance? If you're only 10 minutes into the cave, maybe sending someone out by themselves isn't as big a deal as it would be if you're 7 hours from the entrance. I wouldn't do that. So, but there might be circumstances where it's warranted. So, and we're going to get into that a little bit in these scenarios. And then what are the obstacles between you and the entrance? You know, are you going to be able to overcome those? And is you know, is your patient going to be able to get over those obstacles with some assistance? Are there a lot of vertical drops? Are there a lot of tight crawls? And then last but not least, you know, how tired are we? I've been involved in a lot of small party assisted rescues on trips that I've been on. Unfortunately, I've had that experience. And in almost every single one of those circumstances, we were totally exhausted. We were, yeah, we were really fatigued. And it's hard to make good decisions when you're tired. And sometimes there's not much you can do about that because you still have to make a decision. But it's important to recognize it. You might not be able to take a quick nap before you make your decision, but definitely recognize it and talk about that as a team. Okay, we're really tired here. Are we making the right decision? Let's make sure we didn't miss anything. So just acknowledge that and talk about it as a team. Make sure you're not missing anything. Okay, so all of these are great factors to consider. But what is the end goal? I mean, the most important overarching question that you're asking is what is best for both the rescuers and the patient. And Tom talked about this in his presentation as well. You're trying to get the patient or patients, if there's more than one, to the care that they need, get them out of the cave or out of the situation that they're in, if they're stuck, as quickly as possible, but without creating more patients. So that's why the rescuers is part of this as well. You want to do what's best for everyone because you don't want to get yourself hurt while you're trying to help someone else, because that just makes the problem worse. So what about a sense of urgency? Yeah, I think a lot of you have probably been in emergency situations, whether it's above ground or below ground. And there's this sense of, we got to do something now. We got to act fast. And sometimes you do. Sometimes you absolutely have to act quickly. And there might be times, you know, underground where, you know, maybe a rock shifted and pinned somebody's leg. You got to move that rock off the person's leg. You got to pull somebody out of the water. You got to stop the bleeding, whatever it might be. But once you've stabilized the initial situation, take some time. Whenever there's a moment to sit down and catch your breath and think about it, then do. And talk it out with the rest of your team and think through all the scenarios and eventualities, things that could happen. And yeah, just take your time and avoid making rash decisions. And another really important thing to remember is to write stuff down. I'm often on survey trips, so I have survey paper and a pencil with me. But I've gotten used to, of course, on other trips too, making sure that I've got paper and a pencil in my cave pack with me. And it's also important to have a watch so you can tell what time it is. So I think it's really important to make sure you're writing down your rationale, writing down the decisions that you're making, what time you sent someone out of the cave, what time everything happened. It provides a great record and also helps you to make more well-informed decisions going forward. And then just another quick note on those rash decisions. You think about it, it's like, if your friend falls down and gets hurt, it's kind of, an automatic response. People are like, oh no, you're hurt. Okay, Joe and I are gonna head out of the cave and get help. And if that's all the conversation you have and you take off, that's not good. So, calm down, talk it out with your team, and avoid making that type of rash decision and just leaving the cave before you've had a conversation about it. You need to, know what gear you're requesting, what resources you need. There's a lot of information that needs to be conveyed to the surface. And if you don't get all that information before you head out, that's lost. So, okay. Now we're going to move into the scenarios. My favorite part. Okay. So this will be a good what if. I have not been keeping an eye on the chat. I'm going to see if I can do this. Yeah, maybe Sarah will have to read things to me. We'll see how it goes.
I gotcha. No worries.
Thanks. Okay. So let's just say you're leading a caving trip. You're thinking it's going to take about 4 hours to do the whole thing. There's only 4 of you on the trip. And yeah, this cave really well. So does one other person on the team. And so you're walking through this passage, and Jeff, who's on your trip, he just kind of steps funny on the breakdown and rolls his ankle sideways. And you hear this cracking noise, and it doesn't sound good. And Jeff sits down and he's grabbing his ankle, and he's obviously hurt. So the first question I have for you, and you can put any answers that come to mind in the chat, is, what additional information do you need? Just thinking back to those factors that I talked about earlier. What else are you wondering about before you can make a decision? And then we'll talk about what you would do. Anything?
All right. Someone already asked a question. Is there any vertical? What's between us? Oh, sorry. What's between us and the exit?
It's a great question. In this case, let me go ahead and give the answer to that before we move on to the next one. In this case, we have vertical gear with us on this trip because there will be vertical obstacles further into the trip, but we haven't gotten to those yet. And so we're about 40 minutes from the entrance of the cave, but there's no vertical between us and the entrance.
All right, we have some other great ideas. How much medical equipment do you have? Is the injury usable? How much pain is he in? Or kind of the related ones there.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have any medical gear with us, but we do have someone who has enough medical training to evaluate the ankle and found out that it is an unstable injury.
All right, some other suggestions. Talk to Jeff, do a head to toe. How experienced is Jeff?
Jeff's he's been caving a few times. He's not one of the people that knows this cave really well, but he's been caving a few times, and he did really well coming into the cave this far.
We have a couple of suggestions or ideas around improvising splints or improvising medical equipment, depending on how desperate you are. And then someone also asks for clarification on what is an unstable injury.
Okay. So an unstable injury is basically an unusable injury. So, there's times where you might, kind of roll your ankle and then you find that you can use it. But if it's badly hurt enough, then it needs to be splinted and stabilized, and you won't be able to walk on it. Does that help? It
looks like one more. How much time until our call out?
Great. Yes. So the surface watch, we're only 40 minutes into our trip, and we were thinking it was going to take about 4 hours, and we added a little buffer onto that. So our surface watch isn't going to worry for another like 5 hours. So, all right. Cool. So I'm gonna cut off that part now, because I think you guys have hit a lot of those key points. And I already heard about, I said, what would you do? And I heard improvising a splint. That's great with what you've got. So let's just go ahead and see what happened next. So yeah, one caver had first aid training, splinted up his ankle, apparently with a rack, and padded that well with some shirts and extra things that were in everybody's packs. And we're able to just head out of the cave slowly. It only took an hour. Yay, a happy ending, right? So some food for thought here. What would have happened if the team had decided to just wait for a rescue? Because that surface watch wasn't even going to worry for 5 more hours. And what if the team had sent someone or someones out of the cave to get help? How long would it have taken to get Jeff out of the cave and to the care that he needed under either of those scenarios? Any answers in the chat on that one?
I think folks are still typing.
Okay. Basically, is it more than an hour?
Yes. Yeah. Everyone says way too long, much more time, more than an hour. If it was a cold, wet cave, hypothermic issues could set in after 5 hours. Hypothermia risk, that comes up a couple times.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nailed it. All right. Awesome. Okay, cool. Thanks. So we're going to move on to the next scenario. And this is one that I was a part of. And this was on a 4-day camp expedition into Jewel Cave in South Dakota. And so it was the second day of the trip. And we were out beyond the camp, about 2 hours from camp, so further into the cave than the camp, surveying leads. And, so we're a couple hours away from camp, and the camp has a lot of great supplies. Overall, though, we're 8 hours of travel from the entrance. And one of the cavers who gets occasional migraines started feeling pretty ill. And she told the team, she was getting a migraine now and is just starting to feel super nauseous and can't eat, drink, or cave. So same questions. What additional information do you need? And then we'll talk about what you do.
While people are typing, apparently this happened in Lechuga Cave as well. A lot of folks say, what usually helps migraines? Does she have medication to take for it? And then another question is anyone else feeling weird? I think a lot of them thus far are all about what medication and past history, length, how long the migraines last, I think is what that means, that kind of thing. Yeah, great. Okay. Yeah, and that's awesome. Everybody went right to, what do we have with us that will help fix this problem? And medication is the answer for the most part when it comes to migraines, right? And what else might we be worried about in this scenario if we have to sit still for a while? Someone brought up atmosphere issues. That was right as you were saying that. Now the answers coming in are hypothermia, getting cold, hypothermia. Okay. Yeah, and the atmosphere issues, I think they're getting at, does anybody else feel weird? And yeah, that's a good point. Nobody else in this case felt weird. It was just the one person. So yeah, and good that everybody thought about hypothermia there too, because we might be sitting still for a while. Okay, so what would you do? Someone said both self-rescue and call out is almost always best if possible because you don't know what you don't know yet. This has happened before. How did you handle it the last time? In terms of an actual plan or next step, keep her warm and hydrated. All right. And then if no meds, get her into a sleeping bag at camp. get supplies for a potential bivy, try and fetch the medication if it's not on her.
All right, this is great. Okay, great. You guys are all coming up with some great solutions. This isn't an easy one, especially if you don't have the medication. So, all right, we'll go on to the next slide and you can see what happened. And in case you hadn't guessed already, this was me that had the migraine. And it's happened to me underground a couple times, unfortunately. And I took my medication because I had it with me. Unfortunately, my migraine medication takes like 2 hours to kick in. So I spent 2 really miserable hours under a space blanket. And that is a real picture of me on that trip. Felt super sick. And thankfully, the symptoms resolved after a couple hours. And I was able to get back to camp and was able to continue with the trip. We surveyed a bunch of big cave the next day and headed out on the 4th day and all was well. But I think about this one a lot and what could have been, because it could have been super serious. So, here's some more what ifs. What if I hadn't had the meds with me? And a lot of people kind of started to get into that already. Like, okay, can I go get the medication? Can we get me back to camp so I can get in a sleeping bag? Yeah, if I hadn't been able to get back to camp on my own and, the way I was feeling, maybe it would have gotten better a little bit over time, but I was unable to cave. So kind of a bad scenario being 2 hours away from camp with only 3 people. It would have changed our decisions probably quite a bit if I couldn't have made it back to camp. So yeah, some options that we could have had. Keep in mind, we're 8 hours from the entrance through, and that's, at a quick pace. So to send one person out solo might not have been a great option. I think our best bet would be to try to get to camp or get some of the equipment from camp. But I think if I hadn't had my medication or if my symptoms hadn't resolved quickly enough, we probably would have had to just spend a pretty cold night bivvying right where we were, because we had enough gear with us, warm clothes, space blankets, trash bag. We had enough stuff with us that we could have kept warm enough. Could have maybe rotated who was sleeping under the warm stuff while the other one's doing standing jacks or something in the passage. So it would have been really miserable, but we might have been able to get through it until I felt better enough to get back to camp. So, all right, is there more stuff in the chat that we need to address before I move on, Sarah?
This is a personal medical question, but can I ask what medication helped you, if you're willing to share that? And then there was a really good point about take extra care where you point your lights.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I find so on that note, when I'm sketching, I find that the reflection off of that paper can sometimes kind of trigger it for me. So yeah, the bright lights and where you're pointing them that can definitely be an issue. Yeah, I don't mind sharing about medication at all. I had Relpax, I think at the time was the one that I was taking. I've switched to something else since then, but there's so many of these that kick in a lot faster, and I haven't found one that works for me that kicks in quickly. So the 2 hours thing is just really a drag. Okay, well, we're gonna move on to this will be the final scenario, and then we got a couple more slides, and then we're gonna play a game. So this last scenario is another situation that I was involved in, and this one is right up there with one of the most terrifying things I've been through. And this is another rough one. So, yeah, so this was also in Jewel Cave. And so we were quite a ways from the entrance. It takes, over 6 hours to get out there. It's an area called the Burr Hole. And it's through some super tight, awful passages that nobody ever goes to for a good reason. I had been on a trip to this place in 1999, and we had lost the air in this mess of fissures and ran out of time and left. And no one had ever been back to that lead again. And it was right on the edge of the cave. And so here it was 11, I think it was 12 years later, we finally went back to that lead. And so we were with 4 cavers, and including myself, and we're wrapping up our survey for the day. And we worked our way down this, we're going to work our way down this like little short climb, and setting up the survey shot down the climb was a little complicated. This was before the days of Disto X's. And so we were messing around trying to take this survey shot, and we thought that everything was going to end and that this was going to be the final room, and we were going to finish the area. And there was one little belly crawl that Larry saw leading out of the final room, and we thought it might not go, but we didn't know. So the decision that we made at the time, which seemed like a good idea at the time, was that Kelly would go duck his head into the crawlway and see if it just dead ended right away or if it kept going, because if it ended, no one would ever have to come back here again. So Kelly checked the belly crawl while we were wrapping up the survey, and we knew we had to head out of the cave in like 15 minutes to make sure we were out on time. And after 15 minutes, Kelly didn't come back. So same questions. I see some more stuff has probably been popping up in the chat. Anyway, what additional information do you need about this scenario? And then we'll talk about what you do.
As people are typing, this is like paranoia situation. If within 1 minute late, it's instantly there's something horribly wrong with them. Yeah. Lots of folks say, first question is voice contact. Can you hear him? Can you call out to him? Who forgot to tie the string to Kelly? Does Kelly have a watch? Or can you see lights, or can anyone else get in the tight crawl?
Okay. We can't hear him, can't see him. We know he has a watch on. We also know he took his caving pack with him. We think he still has it with him, but we don't know. Was that it? I think.
Yeah, a couple additional questions now. Is there any relevant medical history? Does he have a history of running off? Does he tend to wander off? Does he have medications for tardiness? And then a very good question is, does it go? I mean, maybe he got distracted because he was actually caving.
Yeah, it turns out it does go. So yeah, okay, those are all great. So those are great things to think about. You know, we did find out later that it does go a little further. There was a reason for a team to go back at a later trip. He doesn't have a history of running off. He's not crazy. He's been in this situation actually once before in Jewel Cave, and it turned out fine. He actually got a little turned around and separated from the group and came right back to the main trail. So we knew that about his history. But yeah, so what do you guys think that you would do if you were the other 3 cavers and Kelly didn't come back?
We have a couple suggestions coming in already. Maybe give an extra 5 to 10 minutes before freaking out. Can the rest of you follow? So some folks are saying follow or wait.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah, I think we did give him a few minutes, but we got kind of worried because we were all pretty clear that, yeah, we got to be heading out of the cave in 15 minutes. And it wouldn't be like Kelly to just run off and be scooping a bunch of passage and not care about the fact that we needed to start heading out. So we were pretty worried. And what did we do? We looked for him for 3 hours and we didn't find him. And it was awful. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever been through, honestly. We were looking for him in things that didn't even make sense for him to have gone into. Like, we went through this crawlway and it didn't obviously like bust out into a bunch of cave right away, but we found some things to check. And at one point we could hear him pounding rocks on the other side of a wall. And it was like maddening because we couldn't get to him. And We couldn't communicate with him. We had no voice contact. He's pounding rocks. We're like, is he hurt? You know, we don't know what's going on with him. We got ourselves completely exhausted, and we were pretty much out of water, almost 7 hours from the entrance of Jewel Cave. And there's a water collector on the way out of the cave that we had been planning to fill up at. So we knew we could get some water as we headed out. But it got to the point where we were like, all right, we're going to become a problem, and we need to head out and get help. We left him a note in the crawlway. There was kind of a junction in there. We left a note there, and then our plan was to leave another note at the last survey station where we had last seen him, along with any extra supplies that we had. And so you can see this note here. The only reason I have a picture of this note is because another team went back there in 2018 and they found it and they took a picture of it. And just seeing this thing is like, it just brings back some crazy memories. So the note says, 7 minutes after midnight, Kelly, we searched for 3 hours. We are beat and need to exit cave. Food at bottom of main fissure at CC 110. That's the survey station. Larry, Renee, Adam. And then we had an arrow in the corner out, so that he knew that was how to get out. So we were faced with that decision of having to leave our friend in the cave. Thankfully, however, when we got back to that last survey station, he was there waiting for us. We had actually gone back to that same spot a couple of times during our search, thinking, maybe we missed something, maybe he went somewhere else. But this time there he was. And what happened is, it's a little complicated, but basically it turned out there were 2 belly crawls coming out of that room, and we didn't know about the other one. So Larry thought that he was in the one that Larry had seen. And Kelly didn't see the one that Larry had seen and went into a different one. So he wasn't even in the same place that we were in. But apparently they were really close together because we could hear the rocks pounding, and it sounded like he was right there. So that's what happened. And then he didn't go very far, but he turned around to come back out, and he couldn't find the crawl he had come through. He had actually made a little stack of rocks, like a cairn, to mark the crawl, but it was like over a hump and he couldn't quite see it. And it just looked different on the way back. And so he was smart. He did what he's supposed to do. If you're lost in a cave, the number one thing that we always tell people is sit still. Don't keep moving around and making the problem worse. So he sat down and waited for us to find him. And then he started pounding rocks. And eventually he got kind of impatient because we weren't finding him yet. and he started trying to find his own way out. And eventually he did. He figured it out, found the missing place where he had gone in, and just waited for us. So we got out of the cave very slowly. We were all super exhausted, and we ended up being 3 hours late. We were supposed to be out by no later than 5 a.m. We were actually thinking we were going to be out at more like 3, and we got out at 8 a.m. 24 hours after we went in the cave. So a couple questions for you. What do you think would have happened if we had kept searching for Kelly?
While people are typing, someone asked if you ever caved with him again.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite caving partners.
Okay, so if he had kept searching, it says one person asked, how did he know you were still in the cave? Bad things could have happened. Someone could have gotten injured. Someone may have gotten hurt or more lost. Fatigue for several of you. You might have crisscrossed paths again. Exhausted, disoriented.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We would have been even more exhausted. I feel like we searched longer than we should have anyway. But honestly, that was such a hard call to make, to leave him behind, because we knew about the serious time lag, how long it would take to get people in there to try to find him. So we gave it the best effort we could. But yeah, if we had kept searching, it probably would not have been good. And then someone asked, how did he know that we didn't leave the cave? Something I left out is one of the times when we returned to our last survey station, we left some stuff there, thinking, maybe he will make his way back here. So we had left a warm shirt there and some food. But yeah, he didn't know for sure that we were still there. But we had been pounding rocks too, we were he was pounding and we were pounding to answer. So he knew we were around for quite a while. Okay, and what if he hadn't found his own way back? That would have been, that time lag thing. If you do the calculations on this scenario, it's not good. Honestly, if it took 7 hours to get out of the cave, in this scenario, we were 3 hours late and our surface watch had started the process, but no one had started coming into the cave yet because it was early in the morning on a Sunday. People weren't answering their phones. Also, there's very few cavers that could even get to where we were. They were starting to call people from Colorado. It would be like a 6-hour drive for those people. I mean, you start thinking about what it would have taken to get somebody out there, and it was going to be probably 24 hours since we last saw Kelly before anyone even made it to that place where we had last seen him. So not a great situation. One good thing about Jewel Cave is that there are rescue packs in certain places throughout the cave on the main travel routes. And Kelly is a very experienced caver, and he knows exactly where all those rescue packs are. And I knew that as long as he could find his way out of that crawl and back to the surveyed cave, I knew that he would be able to make it to the rescue pack that's at the top of the W1 pit. So that would have been about an hour from where he was. And there he would have sleeping bags, he'd have water, he'd have a stove. So, it wouldn't be all doom and gloom necessarily, but a lot of it hinged on him being able to find his way out. So, okay. I'm going to wrap this one up because I just don't want to go too late, and I want to make sure that we have time to play our game as well. But yeah, so lots of sobering stuff to think about, and hopefully it's given you some food for thought. And so just wanted to highlight some resources and training. I know Tom already mentioned this in his talk. Definitely encourage everyone to take some NCRC courses. Wilderness medical training, like Wilderness First Responder or Wilderness First Aid, are really great classes, and those can give you the tools that you need to make better informed decisions about whether it's going to be a SPAR or a call out, and how to care for a patient if one of the people on your team gets hurt. American caving accidents, I can't say it enough. It's so important to report incidents. I've been really bad about it. I was thinking as I was putting this presentation together, there's probably been quite a few scenarios that I've been involved with personally that didn't get reported. And Bonnie will still take old incidents that weren't reported, so feel free to submit those. It's a great opportunity to learn from what's happened to other people, and you should report your own incidents so that other people can learn as well. And just a few tips. We do this all the time, and we've been doing it even more during COVID, I think, because we're doing less caving and more talking. So talk through scenarios regularly with people that you cave with. Think about what's the most likely thing that could happen to you and what you might do in a given situation. And just set yourself up to succeed. Get good training. Know the qualifications of everyone who's on your team. Know if they have some medical experience, and if they've taken cave rescue trainings, and know what other people have on the trip so that you know collectively what gear you've got. But yeah, make the best decisions you can. As you can tell from some of my stories, some of the decisions that I've made underground may or may not have been the best, but evaluate your decisions afterwards. Don't beat yourself up and learn from them. Talk it over with other people that you cave with, and share your stories so that other people can learn too. And then just a quick note on prevention. this presentation has focused pretty solely on what to do in the immediate in the immediate case when you have an incident on your trip, but what about preventing them in the first place? You can make some really good decisions that are safe, that avoid risk, and hopefully prevent you from having an incident in the first place. Doesn't mean we can't still be bold and be pushing things at the end of a crazy cave. But there's definitely been some things that I've done where I'm like, maybe I'll think twice about this one because of the consequences. All right, this should only take like 5 minutes or so, but we are going to, you guessed it, play Jeopardy. See, I got to pull up the other screen here. All right. So I'm not sure how this is going to work with so many people on the call, but I think what we'll do is there's a few categories here, and I'll pick the first question, and then Sarah, we'll see if this works. But people can type the answer in the chat, and remember, your answer needs to be in the form of a question. And so answer the question, and if you get it right, the first person to get it right, or the first person that Sarah sees get it right, that person gets to pick the next category and amount, and then we'll see if that works. If it doesn't work, I'll just keep clicking through them.
Everybody should be typing what is right now in the chat preemptively, right? Just to get ready.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, I see Kevin took me up on that.
One of them might not be a what is. All right, so the first question under decisions for 100, Alex. This is a measure of how far into the cave you are, and it's a factor that can greatly influence the decisions you make in an incident.
Carly with what is travel time?
Correct. Good job, Carly. How far are you from the entrance? Yep. Great. Okay, Carly, what's the next category? Oh, I gotta pull them up, sorry.
Things to carry with you for 500.
Things to carry, for 500, all right. Going big. It's not gonna keep track of everyone's score, so you gotta self-score, I guess. If you know you're prone to certain medical conditions, you should carry this to relieve your symptoms in case you get sick.
First one I saw is from Denani Schmidt. What is medication?
Correct. Good job. All right. Denani Smith, what do you think?
There we go. Let's do resources and training for 200.
Resources and training for 200. All right, this training will help you to address the medical needs of a patient underground and make better informed decisions about whether your team can handle the incident yourselves.
Ooh, Carly again with what is WFA, which is wilderness first aid. But other good answers include what is SPAR, what is NCRC, what is WOOFR. I don't know what the right answer is in this particular case.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. The key here was more the medical needs specifically, because NCRC does teach medical needs or responding to medical incidents, but this is all about whether you can handle the incident yourself or not. You're going to need those specialized skills to evaluate whether this is a spinal injury or not, that kind of thing. So those are all great answers though. But yeah, what I was going for was wilderness medical training, because you're in that remote setting underground.
All right, the first person with that answer was Carly again.
All right, Carly, good job.
Things to carry with you for 400.
Things to carry with you, okay. This is a collection of items that's useful for treating minor injuries.
And Maria Villarreal was the first with what is first aid?
Yes, what is a first aid kit?
Maria, I know you don't have a mic, so go ahead and type it into the chat for what you would like to pick next. While she's typing, Greg says duct tape is all you need.
It's a miracle, that stuff.
All right, next up we have 500 decisions.
Okay, decisions for 500. this is an important factor to consider to help you determine if you have what you need to address a given situation. So I don't know. We'll see what people say.
Carly's answered twice, which I don't think is allowed. I think you have to pick what are the other. What is gear? What is training? What is experience? What is planning? Those are the answers we've gotten.
Yeah, sorry, I probably didn't phrase this one real well, but yeah, those are all great answers because you want to make sure you have the right training. You want to make sure you have all those things. But yeah, I was thinking about what gear you have and what gear everyone else has that's on the trip with you.
Well,
That's
technically then, what is gear? Carly got that one first again.
All right, good job, Carly.
Sure. Resources and training 100.
All right. This publication compiles caving incident reports that we can all learn from.
Will you accept acronyms or did someone have to write it out?
I will accept an acronym.
All right, first answer then. What is the ACA from Jessica, Preston, and Matt Woodward in Nevada?
All right, American Caving Accents, good job. And oh, sorry, let me get to the screen here. There we go.
Jessica, go ahead. Things to carry with you for how much? 200.
All right, 200. This is used to write down notes and keep track of your decisions.
Oh, Donati Schmidt, first with what is pen and paper?
Nice job. All right, what's going to be the next question?
Go ahead, Donati, whenever you're ready.
Let's do resources and training for 400.
All right. This could also have multiple answers, but this can help you think about what you might do in a variety of potential situations.
Someone says, what is stimulants? I don't think that's what you're going for. What is planning? What is scenario? What is brainstorming? GAR, which is a technique to assess risk.
All right. Let's go with that. I think the scenarios one was pretty good.
Oh, that is Bill France.
Nice, Bill. What do you want to choose next?
Okay, let's do decisions for 400.
All right. This common factor can influence decisions in cave rescues and results from being physically or mentally tired.
Oh, Carly must be the fastest typer out there. What is fatigue?
You got it. Nice, Carly. I'm gonna have to send you a
lot
prize.
of other people are also getting it right. They're just not typing quite as fast.
All right.
You can disqualify all my future answers if you want.
All right, Carly, what's it gonna be?
Yeah, sure. Decisions for
Sorry, was that 300? All right. So this is the most important overarching question to consider when you're making a decision during an incident. See if you picked up on this one.
So we have what is safety? What is will I get sued? What is best for the patient? Team safety, personal risk. There's a lot of different types of answers.
Right. Who said what is best for the patient?
Marcia Rasmussen.
All right, Marcia. So yeah, we're gonna do what's best for the patient or patients and also for the rescuers so that we don't become patients ourselves. Nice. All right, Marcia, what do we got?
Yeah. Decisions for 200.
All right. This person knows where your team is going and when they plan to be out of the cave.
Carly was first with what is call out, but I think you might be seeking what is surface watch.
I am.
That is Jess Reese. It's the first for
Hey, Jess Reese. Good job, Jess. All right, Jess, what's the next question going to be?
Resources and training for 500.
All right. This webinar series hosted by Gretchen Baker and Sarah Truby has been a great way to learn about cave rescue topics during COVID.
What is this meeting? What is this? We had a Bill France with virtual topics and cave rescue. We had a very long discussion about what this should be called. So thank you, Bill, for actually getting it right.
Good job, Bill. All right.
Okay, let's do things to carry with you for 300. And I already had it copied and pasted.
Nice. This will help keep you or others warm during an incident.
Oh,
There are
all
multiple
right.
ways.
So we have what is space blanket, what is layers, what is, oh gosh, you guys are typing fast. What is Palmer furnace, what is blanket, trash bag, carbide.
Nice. Any of those.
Kitty, which I think actually is hypo kit, but now I'm really thinking about bringing cats caving.
Hypo kitty. My cat keeps me warm. Yeah, so whoever said the first thing,
All right.
any of these things.
First person was Carly with what is space blanket.
Good job, Carly. All right.
Sure. Things to carry with you for 100.
Okay. Wearing this item will help you keep track of the time when you're making decisions and help you document when things happened.
First one I saw was Denani with what is watch. But at
Yes.
the same time was also Ivan Yates. So lots of folks are doing this one right.
All right, cool. What is a watch? Yes. Okay, well, we only have one left, so I'll just click on it. This training organization is a commission of the National Speleological Society and offers a variety of cave rescue courses.
We had Denani with what is NCRC, but lots of other folks are getting that one right.
Great, that's awesome. All right, the National Cave Rescue Commission. And the winner is the pterodactyl, apparently. All right, well, I hope that was fun. And yeah, thank you all. I had a great time with that, and hopefully it gave you some food for thought. I know we didn't leave much time at all for questions. I'm sorry about that. But happy to entertain any that you might have. If you do want to get a hold of me, I am in the members manual. I intended to put up a slide with my contact information and failed at that. But you can reach me at reneeohms@yahoo.com. And again, I'm in the members manual too. Okay, any questions that I can answer?
Awesome. While folks are typing or thinking of their questions, let's just give a round of applause to Renee. Thank you very much for that excellent presentation.
Welcome.
All right. Yeah, if anyone does have questions, if Renee is willing to stick around, it sounds like she is. Feel free to either type them or you can unmute and ask them.
Yeah, Gerard, if you had a question, go ahead.
Yeah, in the intro, you recommend you have SPRAT training. I was just curious, you recommend that as well?
If I recommend SPRAT training, yeah, I just got my SPRAT Level 1 certification, and for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's the Society for Professional Rope Access Technicians, and I just did that training in November, and it's not 100% applicable to underground rescue, but I find it's really good to cross train with and just pick up other techniques that might be useful underground. I took a lot away from it. But there's a lot of redundancy in SPRAT training that you don't have in caving. And the gear is huge. You're wearing a full body harness and just giant clunky things. So it's just a far different discipline, but it can definitely be of a benefit, I think. And you can learn a lot that I think you can apply underground.
So
Would
it's
you say-
more oriented towards
Sorry.
like professionals, like line workers, probably?
Yeah, I mean, the person that I took my class from, he does a lot of rigging for things like the Super Bowl halftime show and, things like that in Hollywood, stuff like that. there's all kinds of applicability for rope access, and it's, the sky's the limit, really. And I just started on this. I mean, I just got my level 1. So I think there might be some people on this call that have a lot more SPRAT training than I do, that could speak to that better than I could.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
How would you say that experience compared to just being on rope and in cave on rope, like regularly and frequently, and seeing all sorts of different scenarios that, like, all the crazy ways we can string a rope through the cave? Because I feel like before you care about learning 800 fancy shiny things, understanding what to do with like a stripped down bare bones vertical kit and your slippies, grippies, and slideys, which is my new favorite. What was it again? Slippies, grippies?
2 clippies, 2 grippies, 2 slippies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's my favorite thing. But yeah. Compared to just like before people try to find the Taj Mahal magic bullet answer. Like, because I know, like, for me, it's like, well, ever since for the past year, it's like we've been on rope basically every weekend. And like, it's like a vertical asymptote of skill changes of like, holy shit, what I can do now. And it's crazy because, like, looking back, I was like, oh, well, I was trying to find all these fancy answers. In reality, it's like,
SPRAT, I wouldn't say, as far as SPRAT goes, that it's going to be the most applicable thing for caving and for vertical caving or for cave rescue necessarily. It's great training to get if you have the opportunity, just because it's always good to see what other rope technicians are doing. But I think, like you said, just going caving all the time, with lots of different types of people, getting yourselves into different situations, and taking NCRC courses, I think is going to be your best bet.
There's some good comments about somebody commenting about someone who's a level 3 replying, if you wanted to read those.
I'm not seeing them for some reason.
Yeah, it looks like the suggestion is from someone who's a level 3 SPRAT. Don't get SPRAT to be a caver. It's a different environment, and it's from someone who's done SPRAT for about 10 years. Focus on industrial entertainment applications.
Yeah, I would agree with that, just from my experience with it too. It's a whole different environment that they're working in. But I thought it was really helpful because I have taken all of the NCRC classes and I'm an NCRC instructor. And so just as an instructor, I felt that it really just helped me to see what other rope disciplines are out there doing. Any other questions for anybody?
Awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask a totally offhanded one because you used to be my friend's boss at Devil's Tower. And I was going to ask if you ever climbed Devil's Tower.
Yeah, I've climbed Devil's Tower a lot.
Weston?
Weston?
Yes.
Weston Green. Well, great.
He's in Guam right now, so don't worry. Yeah, he's off the face of the earth.
Yeah, he sends me pictures every now and then, and I'm like totally jealous.
I don't know. Guam's up anyway, but yeah, I was curious if it was common and frequent to ever go up it.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go up quite a bit, and I'm a climber too, but
okay.
But I got to go up for work a few times. Yeah, I always made a point of trying to go up for work at least once a year. And there's always something you got to do up there. So.
Didn't Petzel like land on it, like bait or like parachute onto it, or was it somebody else? And like that was Ferdinand Petzel was also involved with a climb or something. Am I making this all up?
George Hopkins was a parachutist in 1941 that got stuck on the summit, and Jack Durrance was the famous climber back then who went up to rescue him. So
1941 rescues, those would have been interesting to see. Just Dolpher shuts off the entire thing, body repel.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Awesome. Let's see, I don't think we have any other questions in the chat. Does anyone else have any other questions for Renee? We've already kind of kept her late, so I want to make sure we're being respectful.
I kept you late.
Awesome. All right, well, hearing none, thank you, Renee, so much again. Wonderful job to both of our speakers, Renee and Tom, this evening. As Gretchen said earlier, you can always check out the NSS playlist for seeing these talks if something went by too quickly and you want to listen again. And we'll see you back here in 2 weeks.